Hey everyone, my name is Mrinal Kutteri. I secured All India Rank 1 in NEET UG 2021. There are a lot of different things that we experience and a lot of things that we need to take care of the day before the exam, the day of the exam, during the exam, and after. So, I would like to recount my experiences of the exam and the day before. And I definitely learned a lot that day. Some things I did right, some things I did wrong. So I'm hoping that my experiences will be of some help to you. I know it will be of some help to me as well, because it will help me review the mistakes I made and hopefully not repeat them in the future. So are you ready to get started? Let's rewind to exam day. The night before the exam, I had planned my study schedule to ensure that I had nothing to study the day of the exam. I mean, that was the goal I had in mind, but I'd be lying if I said I was able to achieve that. I remember the morning of the exam, I thought there are some things that I need to study. I'll be done by it before 11 a.m., and after that, the rest of the day I'll relax. 11 a.m. went to 2 p.m., 2 p.m. went to 5 p.m., and by that point, I was starting to, get sucked into that vortex of self-doubt, like, okay, I forgot this, what else might I have forgotten? So that was the point where my mom put her foot down and said, okay, that's it, books closed, you aren't doing anything else today. So after that, I put my books away. I went to play table tennis for a while with my younger brother. After that, post dinner, I was mostly just relaxing, listening to music, watching some clippings from my favorite shows. Basically, anything that's not addictive, but at the same time will help you relax. And immediately after that, I started feeling so much more confident, so much more calm and peaceful. So my main suggestion would be, if you do feel, I mean, there are some things that unless you read one day before the exam, in school also, we always have the thing, no matter how much we prepare, some things we keep for the day before the exam. As far as possible, avoid it, but if there are a couple of things you need to glance through, okay, do it, because it will give you that sense of complete preparation. So do that, but leave nothing heavy for the last day before the exam. It's supposed to be as free, calm, and peaceful as possible. So that is what I would suggest, and try to catch some sleep. I mean, go to sleep a little earlier than you normally do. Chances are, because of the excitement, nervousness, tension, whatever it is you're experiencing about the exam, the next day you may not be able to go to sleep that easily. I know I wasn't. I was shifting and turning around in my bed for quite some time, but as far as possible, get some rest, because you'll need it the next day. The morning of the exam. The morning of the exam was one of the few days I didn't need an alarm clock or my mother's help to get up. I remember the excitement and tension of the exam did that job for me. So the morning of the exam, yes, you're going to be excited, nervous, tense, everything. You're going to feel a deluge of emotions at the same time, because this is it. This is the day. This is what your last 2, 3, 4, how many ever years of preparation you've put in, this is what it has all led to. But as far as possible, don't try to get caught up in that. If it's leading to excitement, that's great. But if it's leading to nervousness, tension, self-doubt, then as far as possible, try and distract yourself, and don't study on the day of the exam. I would not recommend that, because on the day of the exam also, if you come across something that you may have forgotten, it will really mess with your mental balance. It's far better to enter the exam hall blissfully unaware of what you don't know, if I'm being honest. So have a light meal, relax, and ensure that you're well rested on that day, so that finally when you're going to the exam hall, you're calm, you're energetic, and you're relaxed. Have a light meal. I remember what I had, that have something you like though, because you want to be in the best possible frame of mind, right? So I remember I had 1 or 2 sandwiches that day, homemade, of course. It's one of my favorite foods, and that's what had been prepared to make me feel as comfortable as possible. And after that, I left home fairly early, because my center was quite far away, and my dad's a little bit paranoid about, I mean, he's like, what if that's the day all the red lights all the traffic lights in our way become red? So I left pretty early. Reaching the center, as we all do the night before the exam, and if you're like me, 1 week before the exam, 1 month before the exam, As far as if possible, try and check if you have everything you need for the exam: transparent water bottle, pouch, the required documents like your admit card, your ID proof, everything that's required for the exam. Ensure that it matches all the protocols which are followed at the exam center, because you don't want that additional pressure on you of having to arrange something at the last minute after going to the center. So check that once before leaving home, and after that, only after that should you leave home. As I mentioned, my dad was a little paranoid about the transport. I remember he even had some other people on standby at different points along the journey. Like, in case our car broke down, someone else should be there who can arrange for transport. None of that was required, thankfully. All along the way, I had complete control of the car's music system. That one day, it was only my music that was playing. I had actually created a playlist also for that day to kind of get me in the right headspace for the exam. So after reaching the exam center, my dad, being paranoid, he left early. So we reached well before the exam time. At one point, I was getting bored. Doing nothing there, but in one way I was lucky, because no one who I knew was there at the center, like no one from my school or no one from my institute. So that way, that day I was by myself, left to my own thoughts, to relax in my way without having to interact with other people. So I was speaking to my parents, my younger brother once in a while. In between, I actually called up a friend and spoke to him for about 10-15 minutes. Not long. That's because I had dodged his calls for a while. Apart from that, I was, again, even after going there, I kept listening to music, because for me, nothing calms me down like music. And the day of the exam is all about keeping yourself calm and relaxed. So I kept listening to music. In fact, even 2 minutes before I entered the exam hall, I was listening to music. So that's what I was doing. So as far as possible, have some sort of strategy which will help you stay calm, and so that you'll not start thinking about the exam and about its enormity again. Like, it can be anything. You want to maybe talk to some of your old school friends who have nothing to do with the exam, so, because otherwise again the conversation might go towards how much have you studied and all those topics which are really unnecessary on the day of the exam. Someone who has nothing to do, it could be a cousin, a sibling, a parent, anyone in the family, or anyone, by talking to them, if you feel calmer, more relaxed, do that on the day of the exam. Try to keep interaction at the center with other people minimum. If you do happen to know someone over there, try to keep it to a minimum. I didn't face that problem, thankfully, but if you do have someone there, try and avoid interaction as much as possible. You can do that after the exam, like even when you step out of the exam hall if you want. After that, it doesn't matter. So, but when you're there, don't talk to others. That time is for yourself. You have to decide what you want to do, so that your mental balance is not disturbed. So I remember when I entered the exam hall, it was an engineering college, my exam center. And I remember when I first went inside the classroom where I had to write the exam, the invigilator was a nice, cheerful, cooperative, helpful sort of guy. So immediately I was at ease, I was at comfort. That's one more way I got lucky. I've heard from some of my friends and classmates about them getting a little more strict kind of invigilators, but I got lucky. I had great invigilators who did things on time and spoke politely and nicely to you. So the first thing I remember feeling was boredom, because I was in the classroom about 1.5 hours or 2 hours before my exam. So I had expected that once I'm in the classroom, all I'll feel is tension. But truth is, I mostly felt boredom. I just wanted the exam to start and get done with it. I remember some of the people in the classroom who, like me, had reached well before, actually ended up sleeping for an hour or so. I wasn't able to, but yeah. Then when I got the question paper, from there, to be honest, it's a little bit of a blur, like from when I got the question paper, because from there, kind of instinct kind of took over. Like, if you write mock tests frequently, you develop a sort of set strategy which automatically takes over when you start writing an exam. So you start with the paper, you immediately fill in your details, and do that one thing very carefully. If your invigilators follow protocol, they'll give you the OMR sheet and all a little before the exam actually starts, so that you can fill in your details carefully, and the thumb impression and all those things. So take care of that, do that carefully. because if you don't want to go wrong there, that's one place where you should be really careful. So be focused, take some time for that, no problem. And after that, when you get the question paper, all those years of practice will kick in. You'll immediately go to the section which you are most confident about, and you'll start with that. Maybe go through a couple of questions if you want, and just kind of get a feeler of how the paper is, and then you'll start, and you won't really be thinking much consciously. Once the exam starts, it's a whole zone, you know. It's always one question to the next, to the next, to the next. So there's not really much to say about. All the years of practice that you have will kick in. Paper attempting strategy. There were a few questions or areas in the paper where I could have gone wrong, and or maybe I would not have found time for it, considering the fact that the paper this year was a little lengthy. But either due to smart work or due to luck, not gonna lie, that was also there. Due to one or both of these factors, I was able to avoid making mistakes. So let's look at some questions. Firstly, in physics, the third question, a body is executing simple harmonic motion with frequency n, the frequency of its potential energy is. Here, there is a very simple reasoning that you can use to solve this. In the expression for potential energy, which is 1 by 2 m omega square x square, you see that the amplitude term has, the displacement term has a square, which means it is not possible for it to take a negative value. And we know that the frequency of simple harmonic motion is n, because the displacement can take positive or negative terms. On the other hand, potential energy can only take positive terms. So because of that, we can automatically say that the frequency of potential energy will be double that of displacement. So hence we can say that if the frequency of SHM is n, the frequency of its potential energy will be 2n. Let's take another question from physics, the 32nd question. The velocity of a small ball of mass m and density d when dropped in a container, and so on. It is given here that velocity becomes constant after some time. If the density of glycerin is d by 2, then viscous force acting on the ball will be. This question can be solved almost mentally. Like, don't do it mentally because there's some room for mistakes, but you will have a fair idea of it by yourself. Think about it. The density of the ball is d, and the liquid in which it is immersed has density half. So since the expression for the weight of the body would be V rho g, where rho is the density of the body, and for viscous force it is again V rho g, where rho is the density of the liquid, we can automatically say that the upthrust on the ball is going to be half of the weight. But on the other hand, it is given that velocity is constant after some time, which means that net force on the ball is 0 according to Newton's first law. So hence we can say that the net force on it is 0. So the whatever remaining force is there to balance the part of weight which is not balanced by upthrust comes from viscous force. So automatically mg minus mg by 2 leaves us with mg by 2. Let's look at the 60th question of chemistry. Questions like this is where you can save time, because the minute you look at the question, you see that this is something which has come directly from NCERT. It is addition on the basis of anti-Markovnikov rule, because you see HBr, you see an organic peroxide, automatically you add the bromine part of it away from, in the less substituted one, and you can say that the answer is the second option. So in no time you can solve this question and move on, because you need to make time for the other more difficult ones. Now let's look at a question from biology. The 170th question. This was even subject to a little bit of confusion and controversy, and I'll be honest, I got this question more or less through luck. Because look at this question. This is one of those biology questions that can take a little bit of time. So let's look at it step by step. Venereal diseases can spread through. There are 5 statements: using sterile needles, transfusion of blood, infected mother to fetus, kissing, inheritance. Choose the correct answer. So I was a little bit confused about this when I went through the 5 statements. So in questions like this, especially in biology, or a question which says choose the correct option or incorrect option, one very useful tool which you can use here is elimination. So I know for a fact that using sterile needles and inheritance is not correct for the spread of venereal diseases. So anything which has A and E in it can automatically be eliminated. So now you can move your focus entirely to the third and fourth option. The third option here is B, C and D. The fourth option is B and C only. This is where I took a little bit of a leap of faith because I was completely certain about B and C. Kissing, I was mostly sure it's not right. Like most of the venereal diseases I've read about did not have kissing mentioned as a mode of transmission. And it's not mentioned in NCERT either, which, as most of us know, is the basis, is the source material for the NEET exam. So based on that, I took a little bit of a guess here and I went for the fourth option, B and C, which thankfully turned out to be correct. So here, one thing I would like to say is, by elimination, if you can bring it down to two options, you're a little confused between the two, but you're still confident, one option seems more correct than the rest. If you have that kind of risk taking ability and courage to take that risk, and also if you're ready to accept the consequences, I would say take that shot. Don't take a blind guess. If both of them seem correct to you, then there's really no point in taking a 50-50 shot, right? But if you do feel more strongly about one option than the other and you have valid reasons for going for that, then please go for it. If I had left out this question, I would definitely have lost my shot at a perfect score. So if you are leaning towards something and you have a good reason to believe in that and you are ready to accept the consequences, whatever it is, then go for it. Finishing the paper. This is the part of the paper where tension's probably running a little high, especially if you're running a little short of time. In my case, I was able to finish the paper dot on time. Like I didn't have much time left to check, maybe a couple of minutes probably, but that's about it. So one thing here, don't panic, especially if you're still solving towards the end. Like there's no problem if you were able to finish the paper well in advance and now you're only checking. That's not a problem. But if you do have a couple of questions left to solve, this is the time where it's going to be most difficult to keep calm, but as far as possible, do try to maintain your mental balance and peace of mind, because this is where errors are most likely to happen, when there is a time crunch and the end is in sight. So try not to think too much about it, kind of zone out your surroundings. If the invigilator is around asking for papers or telling you 2 minutes left, 5 minutes left, zone that out. Just focus. By chances are by now you would have already gone through the paper and you're just giving time to those difficult questions which you're not so sure about. So you will be able to do much more by just keeping a calm mind, because the questions you knew you have solved. Now it's all about trying to score as much as possible by tackling these difficult questions. So stay calm, think clearly. If you get it, great. Otherwise, it's okay. You didn't know. Happens to most of us, happened to me as well in many of the mock tests I wrote, thankfully not in the final exam. And finally, when it comes to OMR marking, this is one thing. Some people tend to leave OMR marking for the end, and personal opinion, I would not encourage that, because the most painful way to lose marks in the exam is because you didn't mark your answer in the OMR sheet correctly, because it is something that will haunt you for quite some time if you make that mistake. And especially this is even more applicable now, because with the introduction of a section B in each subject, where you have to skip 5 questions out of the total 15 and attempt only 10. If in that flow you end up marking the first 10, whereas actually in your question paper you had skipped a few questions here and there, that will cost you dearly, and that is something you're going to have a tough time coming to terms with. So which is why I would say OMR marking is something that you should do as far as possible during the exam. Like when you solve the question, tick it in your question paper or whatever you do, and immediately mark it in your OMR sheet. This will ensure that minimum mistakes are made during OMR marking, which is what I did in the final exam, and that's what I would recommend too. Coming out of the exam hall, I remember I was actually, I was able to attempt all the questions. I was able to, answer them to the best of my ability. But I remember coming out of the exam hall equal parts disappointed and relieved. relieved because the exam's over, and disappointed because there were quite a few questions like that zoology question which I had mentioned. There were a few questions which I was not 100% sure about, and I'm a bit of a pessimist, so I was taking all of them as mistakes until I would see the key. So I remember stepping out of the exam hall a little more than disappointed, a little, scared, if I'm being honest, because I don't know how I did. I did fairly okay, but those few guesses which I took, were they going my way or not? Because in the final exam, obviously every question makes a difference. So that was the first thing on my mind. I stepped out of the exam hall. My parents and my younger brother, who had accompanied me to the exam, they were outside waiting for me and asking how the paper was. They wanted to know, obviously, but I had a simple answer. The paper was okay. I mean, that's all I say for any paper, really, because in this particular case, there were some questions I was unsure about. So I couldn't exactly say it went great either. So yeah, it went okay, and I was for the most part satisfied with my performance. But this little thing of the questions which I had kind of guessed was still nagging me a little. Final result, considering the emotions I was experiencing when I stepped out of the exam hall, the final result was a big contrast, really, because I remember when I stepped out of the exam hall, I was expecting somewhere around 670, 680 maybe, like taking into account that a few of those questions would go wrong. But nothing did go wrong, and I wouldn't say I was very happy. For a while I was numb. Like it didn't sink in for a long time. My parents, my family, my teachers were at home and they were ecstatic, jumping around in joy. But for me it was a little surreal, like I don't know what's happening around me kind of thing. And that feeling actually lasted for quite a while, to some extent even now. But yeah, that particular time it was at its peak. I couldn't really comprehend much of what was happening around me, but I was happy that I got the result I was, can't say hoping for, I was dreaming about, and I would also be able to go to my dream college. So all in all, it ended well. Well, this brought back a lot of memories for me. But now it is time for you to take action. The correct strategy of attempting the paper can help you fetch your dream rank and college. And now that you know how I did it, go ahead and test yourself with the test series on Unacademy. Use the code CTWT to avail a 10% discount. Link is in the description. Now I would like to tag Nikhar Bansal, All India Rank 5, to share his exam day experience and what worked and what did not work for him. And that's a wrap for the day. Thank you, good luck, and hope to see you in your dream college soon.